All right, everyone. How's everyone doing? My name is Josh Dubois of JD Strategic. We got the fresh new background going. We are on episode 6 of the Conquer the Mind podcast. We got a special guest, Matt with Naturals to Go today. So Matt spent 20 years of his life in the media industry in corporate America, most of his time as a multimedia sales executive with ESPN. So really excited to dive into his background at ESPN, very cool position that he held. And I think the marketing, the sales background is just so relatable to anything that people do today. So he left corporate world in 2015, and after exploring a variety of different franchises, Matt decided to launch his own Next Step Franchise Advisors, which is a franchise consulting company dedicated to helping people achieve their goal of business ownership, which is really one of the goals of the podcast, really helping people take control of their future and really just be educated on all these different opportunities. So after placing multiple people with Naturals to Go as a franchise consultant, Matt was actually became a business owner of Naturals to Go. So he is an owner operator of Naturals to Go. And later on, Naturals to Go even recruited him, where he's in his current position today, doing franchise development for Naturals to Go as a business consultant. So Naturals to Go is a healthy snack and beverage division of Vending, which is the fastest growing, longest running. I could go on and on with fancy adjectives here because it really is the top of the industry of vending machine opportunities in the United States. They have a fully integrated, all-inclusive turnkey program, which is really what everyone's so fascinated about today. So today we're going to dive into really Matt's background, what Naturals to Go is, the opportunity, what they're looking for, and really just educate people on the opportunity and a little bit about Matt's background. So usually I like to start these off, especially as kind of a young entrepreneur. And I think your background, especially in corporate America for really 20 plus years, is really very interesting. But if you could just start off kind of in high school as kind of a young entrepreneur, I feel like one of the goals of the podcast is just a lot of people, especially graduate from college, don't necessarily know what they want to do, still feel kind of lost in life. And I feel like even a lot of successful people, they were in that similar position where they didn't necessarily have it all figured out from the start. Or maybe you may have had it all figured out from the start, but as we were kind of just joking about, no one really knows about franchising from an early age unless their family was involved in franchising. So we'll get into franchising later on, but can you just start off like in high school? What was kind of the environment you were surrounded with? Were the people around you successful? What was kind of the path growing up? Were you always kind of business minded? What did that look like?
Yeah, good stuff. And thanks for having me on this. I love the logo, and this is a great opportunity to get that. I don't know how many iterations it took for you to get to that, but it looks perfect behind your head. Well done. And so it's funny you asked me to go back to high school. Here's an interesting one. So I grew up in Queens, New York, as you could tell from my Southern accent. And I went to Archbishop Molloy High School, which is the home of both Kenny Smith and Kenny Anderson, who was there playing high school basketball when I was there. So I got to see some fantastic high school basketball. But the good part of being in a school like that, not only was it just competitive, but there were a lot of smart kids there. And I think we were all ingrained at a young age to work. So my first job was a 125 house paper route. I think that's usually everybody's job. Yeah. So think about it. 7 days a week, I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning delivering papers. Rain, snow, sleet, it didn't matter. But I think that taught me a lot about having responsibility, dealing with customers, trying to provide excellent customer service, relating to people who were sometimes 20, 30 years older than me. I mean, it was a great job. I also had a job mowing lawns in a cemetery. So one might think of that as not being the most desirable place to work, but it was my first taste of being in a union and being with people who said, hey, it's break time, let's go. We went as a group, come back and do stuff. So it was a great experience sort of getting me set for college. But still, I think like a lot of people, came out of high school not knowing what I wanted to do. I thought I did. I really didn't know what I wanted coming out. That makes sense? That a good story?
No, that's very helpful. And that's interesting. You're the basketball background, Kenny Smith and Kenny Anderson. Even as a younger entrepreneur, I'm very aware of those guys. Basketball was actually growing up. One of my goals growing up was to play basketball overseas. But as I kind of reality hit me that really wasn't that great. I put in the hours, I put in the practice, but the talent just wasn't there when the games came down. I couldn't perform, and I think
Listen, that's okay. The same thing with 97% of the other high school
yeah.
athletes out there. I get it.
No, and I think that's a really great point, kind of just building upon what you said with having all these 7 days a week jobs from such an early age, where I think a lot of kids my generation, and myself included, where we graduate when we're 20 and we spend a lot more time kind of on our cell phone than really out in the real world. And I think even those jobs that you're not passionate about, but you're forced to do 7 days a week, I think it just gives you such a valuable perspective. And then when you do probably graduate from college, you have a sense of, you want to do some other things with your life. So I'd be curious, and also just being surrounded with those athletes, being surrounded with kind of people that were they kind of very successful in high school as well? And were you kind of surrounded by all these successful people, and did it kind of motivate you to kind of where you are today?
Yeah, it definitely did. It definitely did. The school had a very good reputation. You needed high scores to get in there. So I was surrounded with people that, all went off to the Ivy Leagues and the junior Ivies and, the top rated schools. Now, that was all well and good. For me, from somewhat of a humble background, I knew I was going to a state school, right? So I wound up going to the University of Buffalo, the first and foremost because it was more affordable, and that was my option. But I think my experience with seeing the opportunities that people did have in the colleges they went to, and also with my work experience, I knew that I went to college, that I was always looking for the next opportunity. And I think, and I sort of bestowed this to my kids when they were in school, was you don't necessarily have to know what you want to do when you go in. It's taking full advantage of what that school is going to offer you. First thing it offers you is a variety of classes to be able to take to broaden your knowledge and help you come out of your shell. And that's exactly what I did. Some would joke, and my family loves to joke with me, but I took everything from basic acting to racquetball to cartography to deductive logic and currency arbitrage and everything in between, because I just wanted to try to sample everything so that I can get some sort of inspiration for what I want to do later in life. And it was enjoyable. My 4 years of college were some of the best, I'd say the best time period, which is it's supposed to be. But it really did expose me to different career tracks that were out there, different people, different ways of thinking about things, and also different internship opportunities that I had, different independent studies that I was able to take advantage of. And it sort of all helped me culminate at the end of college, coming out, not knowing what I wanted to do.
That's powerful.
Like everybody else.
Yeah, you're trying all these different things though, and it just kind of continues to relate to this idea of, when you try these different things, you have a better understanding of what you want to do nowadays. And a lot of times I was kind of just reading a lot about anxiety, and it's a kind of because you have so many different options, especially nowadays, we're surrounded by 100 different options. I always kind of joke about, especially as kind of a younger person, you're trying to figure out, all right, where's the money for a career path, and just like real estate, crypto, NFTs, finance, all these different routes. So people always kind of just say, I'm going to do real estate, I'm going to do this, but the money is really, where you want to put the work and where you can provide that value, those services. And it's just so beneficial when you try those different things out, and, just not having regret and kind of wondering, would I have liked this? Would I have liked that? And that's so funny. You're doing racquetball, acting. How long of a time frame were you doing each of these things? Was it like a week here, a week there? Were you doing it for like months at a time, and you were like really figuring out, do I like this? Do I like that? Or walk us through kind of how you're trying all these different things, and then as college progressives, do you start to head down a business path, or how do all these different things kind of affect where you are
Right.
now?
Right. So again, those were all classes I took. So those
Yeah.
were semester-long experiences in all
Okay.
different disciplines. And look, in there was also thing about film. I had psychology classes, sociology, all down the line. But at the end of the day, I ultimately started to gravitate towards business, and I wound up coming out of college with an economics degree.
Mm.
But what I learned in being involved on campus and with the people I met is that I had an ability to talk to people. So I knew at some point that I was going to get into sales or business development in some
Okay.
way, shape, and that's what ultimately happened. So when I got out of school, my generation, it was all about, all right, you're getting a job and you're working. That's it. So you get your job, and you only have to get your first job once.
All
So
right.
get it, and then focus in on what you're going to do afterwards. So I got my first job. I actually started down on Wall Street in a support role, and I knew very quickly that's not where I wanted to be. That wasn't the environment. So I wound up going back to business school to get my MBA, and I got my MBA in marketing. Although I was in a school that was primarily finance driven, NYU, I
Yeah.
did wind up with a marketing degree, and that I loved that creative side of the business because it was all about connecting with the consumer, coming up with strategies in order to do that. And it was all the tent poles that are within marketing, advertising, promotion, merchandising, down the line that I started to love and gravitate towards.
Yeah.
And then that was it. So once I got out of there, it was about, okay, how am I going to parlay that into my next move? And that was it.
I think you said something really powerful there about how needing like 40 years to kind of do something. Kind of trying to figure it out, kind of life as you get that first job coming out of college. I'm kind of thinking back to my days, and as my sister's graduating college, and I know you have family that's from UF just like me, and getting that first job, there's just so much pressure. You send out your resume to so many companies, trying to, even just hearing back from a company that they rejected you is like kind of a sigh of relief. Usually you kind of get ghosted, and it's kind of different where, I feel like a couple of decades ago, even a few years ago, there was so much pressure because, really the goal is to spend 40 years at a company and really retire at that company. Start in the ladder room, work your way up to literally being a corporate executive. And I think, like you said, not feeling all that pressure that like your life relies upon that first job, because as you kind of talk about trying all these different things, having that marketing background, it just leads you to being able to figure out kind of what you want to do. So I think that was a very powerful thought, as it took me a while to kind of put my thoughts together there, but I think that was just something powerful that I really wanted to highlight. That I think a lot of people kind of go through that similar path, and you just try these different things and things start to line up, and these marketing roles, these sales roles, they just relate so much to everything that people do, these skills that you need. So can you start to walk us through, now you have this marketing passion, you have this business passion. I know you spent a couple years at ESPN. Can you walk us through what that position looked like and kind of what you were doing there? And one thing that I think is so fascinating, that ESPN is literally such a major company, and kind of similar to McDonald's. You think, they spend no money on marketing. People are just going to show up there. And, that couldn't be further from the truth. The more higher up you get, the more money they spend on marketing, I feel like. So can you walk us through what your role was and how kind of important marketing sales was at ESPN?
Sure, sure. It was, well, it was an interesting progression because I did 3 tours at ESPN.
Okay.
So again, a lot of this goes back to some of the lessons, right? You take your experience, you know where you want to be, right? Now you're starting to figure it out. Let me rephrase that. You're starting to figure out where you want to be. So media was it. I liked sales. I was a sports fan. It's sort of everything was sort of working out. So I knew where I wanted to be and the steps I needed to get there. So I started at ESPN. Believe it or not, I took a job that was up in their headquarters in Bristol after I got out of business school. to get my foot in the door, get that first ESPN job, and then figure out where I wanted to go. Then once I got in, I figured out where would I be able to provide the best value. I was in a division that I wasn't necessarily suited for, but it did suit my marketing and my business background. My MBA was perfect for it. But I knew I still wanted to get into the advertising, sales, and sponsorship side of the business. So I networked internally, found the right contact, pitched a job, and wound up getting a job there and moving back to New York, where I was from, because I was actually living during the week up in Bristol, Connecticut, on a farm in somebody's spare room. And I would come home on the weekends. But listen, Josh, you had to do what you had to do, right?
Yeah.
To find the space you wanted to be. So I then got in a position that was supporting the ad sales department at ESPN. And when it was just ESPN, there was no two, there was no news, it was just ESPN. Then while I was there during that experience, ABC bought ESPN. Then Disney bought ABC and ESPN. And then it is what it is today. But once I got to the point where I knew, man, I just can't get past this based on my current experience, I left and joined CNN and got a junior AE role there. Okay. Same kind of thing. I saw what I need. I wanted to become an account executive, a full-fledged salesperson. You know, I was with 50 other people who were in my same role who I had to compete with. So I knew I needed to do much more and I had to work that much harder. I used to come in on weekends. Whatever it was, I wanted to position myself for that next job to open, and I finally got it. And I was able to sell for CNN, and I did that for a little while. And then ESPN.com was launching and getting off the ground. So I'm like, ooh, can I be on the front? And here's a funny story too. When I was at CNN, I got a call from a headhunter to join this company that was doing like search. I'm like, and it had a weird name, and I'm like, I really have no interest. I'm at CNN, right? The #1 brand in news. The company was Google.
Wow.
And it was Google when it was starting. And I said no. But hey, can't regret that because I used the information I had at that point, which is my advice to everyone. No armchair quarterback. You're using the information you knew. I was at CNN. It was a top brand. I loved the job. I loved the people. The management was great. ESPN.com started launching. I already had experience with ESPN. So I pitched a job to go back there and work for ESPN.com or ESPN Internet Ventures. There were a number of brands underneath it, etc. So that was great. I started really understanding what the digital universe was like. I worked with some incredibly smart people who wound up running some of the largest digital organizations in the industry, coming from the organization I was with. Then the .com boom was alive and well. There were 40 different pet websites, everything else, as you can imagine. And there was a startup in the sports space that was looking for people. And I said, okay, now let me leverage my sports plus sports digital background to go there. And I wound up getting a sales management job with Rivals.com. At that point, it was an independent company. It has since been bought by Fox and Yahoo and now exists, I think, in the Fox umbrella somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. But at that point, that company was 8 to 10 years ahead of its time. It was using user-generated content at the team level and then putting it all together to aggregate an audience and to sell advertising against that, which pretty much is what sports media is all about right now. Team-specific content generated at a local level, aggregated up to sell affinity. But we were just so far ahead of our time. But that job wound up not going the way I wanted, and I wound up parlaying that experience back into a job at ESPN for my third time, and that's when I stayed there for another, all in was about 20 years, all in, but that that stretch there was for probably another, I guess, 15 years.
Huh, that's fascinating right there. And ESPN, that's funny. You were at the very first ESPN. It kind of reminds me of all the different iPhones at this point. And I think that I've seen like ESPN 7, 8, 10. There's so many different ESPNs at this point. And
Gosh, ESPN, the phone. Do you remember that?
no,
ESPN had a branded flip phone. ESPN was in that business for a little while.
geez.
That was incredible. So, but again, when you start to see the power of what I was learning along the way was the power of a brand name, and how if you take that brand and extend it into new markets, it can become an instant leader if you have the right thinking behind it and the people to support it. I had the benefit of working alongside some of the smartest, most talented people in sports media who all have, and the same thing was at CNN, who all went out into the media industry and took leadership roles. Same thing happened for me at ESPN. And then at ESPN, look, not people who don't understand what the ad sales business is all about. You know, my teams worked with everyone from Fortune 500 companies down to local marketers and everywhere in between, and the people that represented their business to help them extend their brand initiatives to reach and connect with our fans who were their customers already or potentially their new customers. In essence, that's what we did. We took those brands and aligned them with different sports assets, and via their advertising messages and their sponsorships, they were able to interact with fans on a daily basis. And that's what I did. And that's what was the most fun and exciting job I think I've ever had. During those years. I was in sales management. I had the opportunity to have a couple of different jobs within ESPN. So it allowed me to keep my role and my own personal self refreshed all the time, because every couple of years it was a new opportunity that I jumped at. But it was really, really an exciting job. But again, it's all about understanding the sales process. And Josh, as you know, there's a couple of key tenets that I've learned along the way, and I'm sure that you've learned. It's about asking the right questions of the right people, taking the time to stop and listen actively. Then again, follow up with asking more probing questions and qualifying questions, making sure that you're both understanding where you're coming from. And then from there, doing some hard work and coming back with a solution that makes sense and that demonstrates that you listen to your client. And that's what, by the way, fast forwarding, that's what we do every day with the people that we work with. That's what I did with, like I said, the marketers and the agencies that represented those marketers in that space.
No, that's powerful.
That makes sense?
No, that you said a bunch of really powerful things, and I think the sales process is something very beneficial for anyone out there. As we were kind of talking about earlier, the marketing, the sales, these are some of the skills where if you can develop these, you can be powerful in literally any field. So I think that's very powerful there. Just the marketing, the sales, you develop these skills, you can kind of build them in other departments. And I just think it's interesting going back to ESPN and kind of the similarities to franchising, how you kind of drew that gap over the franchising, just the power of brand recognition. And we were kind of joking, ESPN, they have so many different versions, and similar to franchising, having those systems in place where you can replicate a business in all these different markets. So I'm just kind of curious, as you were in ESPN for literally 2 decades, it really sounds like you enjoyed your experience. You got a ton out of it. What kind of drew you to become a franchise consultant? I know you were evaluating a bunch of different opportunities at that point. What was kind of the gap from corporate America to the world of franchising? When did you start looking at franchising? What did that look like for you?
Okay. Yeah, that was a good question. In 2015, I would say I was liberated from my position at ESPN. That's just a fancy way of saying that Disney went through a difficult time, had to lay off about 300 people. I was part of that class in 2015. So for the first time, I was sitting there saying, I look back, almost like recapping what I just talked to you about, saying, look what I've done. What can I do next?
Yeah.
I can go back into media if I wanted. I can go to another network. I can go to a sports team. I can go to an agency. I can go to an upstart, because I had a chance to touch so many different audiences. But what I did learn in doing the media was they were great transactions, right? And I love the fact when I was able to see the final result, a sponsorship come up. Someone's an entitled sponsor of an event, right? And you see it on TV, but then you go to the event and their branding is all around. And representatives from their company are interactive with the fans at their booth, and things like that. I mean, it was such a full circle, a fully integrated marketing program that we were selling. I said, wow, what great skills I developed. Wouldn't it be, maybe I can try to do that on my own. Maybe put out my own shingle out there and I'll be a consultant. And I'm like, nah, maybe that's not what I do. So I finally decided, you know what? I've been working corporate really my entire life. I'm going to try to do something on my own. I think it's right. I've got the experience. So I wound up working with a franchise consultant like us, who did everything. Started with the intake, asked about me, my background, what my goals were, stuff that I started to incorporate when I was talking to people. What are you good at? What are you not so good at? Okay, now that you've answered that, what if I asked your parents that, or your best friend, or a previous employer, what you're good at or what you're not good at? What would they say? Really starting to get into my head of like, whoa. So as I'm going through all of this and answering these questions, and where do I want to be? And really, how much money do I want to invest? And do I like to go out there and promote and network my business? And start to think about those things. I'm like, okay, here's what it is. Show me some businesses. So I went through the process and I went through validation on a number, and I got really close to a specific home services brand. But for one reason or another, it didn't work out. But I looked back like I've always done on my experiences, and I said, that was really, really cool. I loved what that franchise consultant did for me. He was great. He was interested in me. He was vested in my success. He wanted to know about me, not just to satisfy a checkbox on a list, but because he wanted to do his research and make sure he came back to me with concepts that made sense for what I was looking to accomplish in the future and what I brought to the table personally and professionally. And I said, you know what? My skills in sales are easily transferable to doing that. So I decided to launch my own franchise consulting business, as you mentioned. Next Act Franchise Advisors. I did it for about 5 years. I worked with hundreds of people in that exact same manner. And you know what I loved about it? And Josh, this is going to sound dramatic, but this is what you and I still do that. What you and I do every day. We change people's lives. It sounds dramatic. It sounds hokey. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, when we work with people, when they wake up that next day as a business owner, we change their life. For the better. They are waking up saying, I own my own business. I'm going to leverage everything I did in my life to do good for myself, my family, and my community. That is pretty powerful. And to me, that was the most rewarding thing of my career, that I actually was able to change people's lives for the better. And that was the transition. It was noticing that there were transferable skills. The only way I knew it was because I experienced it firsthand, as you were alluding to very early on. Nobody knows about franchising. Nobody knows about franchise consulting. That's another step further. But it all brought us around, and it was great. And I loved that experience. I loved learning about all the different brands in the portfolio. I learned about being able to, and he was the other thing, and here's the key thing, and I'll sort of wrap it on this. Not only is it being vested in the person, my consultant was vested in me, I got vested in my people, but I never presented a brand to anyone. I always had a conversation about it, and that changed the game. And I think that's why people trusted me, because they knew that I wasn't trying to sell them anything. All I was doing was delivering upon the information that they gave me and validating that I listened to them based on the ideas I presented. And that was great. That's what I love.
No, that's so powerful. And one of the things that I always kind of say, franchising is just so unique in literally every different aspect, but that field especially where, you literally are just taking control of your future, like you said. It kind of sounds dramatic, but it really is something that I always say, when I talk to people, I help people take control of their future because it is true. It is what people do. And I think a lot of times consultants in a lot of different industries, they have a bad rep where people think consultant, you're paying someone for their time. A lot of consultants like to say, they quit the 9 to 5 so they work for themselves. But in franchising, we work for you. We work free of charge. Franchising is just such a heavily regulated industry that whether you choose to use a consultant, a broker or not, the price to purchase a franchise, a business, it's literally the exact same. It's literally the FTC literally regulates this for your protection, for your own good. And like you said, working with your own consultant, even though you chose not to move forward, it allowed you to at least make that educated decision so that you did know what you were doing. And with these consultants, there's thousands and thousands of opportunities. And a lot of times people think, the McDonald's, the Subway, where, it's literally $1 million investment, you're literally $800,000 in debt after year one. And it's literally not that case where there's so many opportunities, like you said, in home services that aren't this huge investment and are super profitable. And really the goal of a consultant is really to save you time and money. You're not paying us, it's very unique. We're saving you time, whereas we already have these resources where we've screened through these thousands and thousands of opportunities so that we understand, like you said, you are in corporate America, you have a family, you're trying to balance all these different things. And I always say really number one for anyone is, trying to provide for your family, trying to create those generational wealth opportunities. And, it's tough when you're in corporate America trying to balance, how could I buy a business? How can I be a business owner? And, in episode 1, Dennis Schooley talks about how 70% of people think about business ownership, but very few people even, make the decision to act upon that. So our
Yep.
goal is literally, I'll emphasize it, save you time, save you money so that we've already taken the heavy lifting out of the process. So I always kind of say very much like a realtor of franchising, where we're not selling houses, we're not selling franchises, we're getting to know our clients, the partners that we work with, seeing what you're looking for. We'll present a variety of different flavors, and then we can always pivot and navigate. And like we said at the end, you may decide, franchising, that franchise in particular, or franchising in general is not for you, but allowing you to make that educated decision, I think is really powerful. And just the idea of taking control of your future and, not having to work that 9 to 5, like you said, having those tough economic cycles where you're not sure, if you're going to have that job next week, the week after. So being able to actually have that control of your future. So now, you become a franchise consultant, you kind of take control of your future, kind of because you had to, you kind of are forced to leave corporate America. What was it like in those first early months as you're kind of, you're working for yourself? And I always kind of say you're really combining passion with profit and franchising, where you're making a difference in other people's life and you're also taking control of your future for your family, for yourself, and really providing these opportunities. But it obviously comes with some sort of risk. And especially, as you're starting a franchise consultancy, you don't necessarily have that franchise, that system in place, trying to kind of do it by yourself. So what was it like in those first 6, 12 months, when you're taking that big risk? And, can you talk to us now? Like, was it worth it? Are you 100% confident in the decision you made? would you ever kind of go back to corporate America, or kind of walk us through that?
Okay, let me start with the end. No, I am not going back to corporate America. It was, and not that it's bad. I had a fantastic experience there. But let me tell you, it was not easy. When you come out of corporate America, when you pretty much slot into its own version of a system, like a franchise system has, and you do what you do every day, and you've got support people around you, and then it's just you. So every decision you make, you live and die by it. You just have to have the expectation set that you're willing to do that. And I was. I did on day one, I said, whatever I do here, the results are based on what I did. I'm not pointing the finger at anywhere else. I'm not going to make any excuses. It's up to me what I did. So I spent those early times, and they were lean, but I made sure I reached out to all the leaders in the franchise consulting space to find out what they do. Number one, I reached out to all the brands that I immediately had an affinity for or heard from those conversations to find out what made them tick, what made them good, what made them the best in their space, what made them differentiated in their space. I learned. Because that was the only way for me to feel confident enough that I can wake up every single day and say, well, I'm going to do the best job I possibly can. Why? Because I'm prepared. So that's what I did. And a lot of that came back from the experience from going back to high school, seeing what was around me, seeing what I wanted, what I couldn't do at that point, and knowing what I needed to do to get there. And I did it. And it was a great ride. I learned, I spoke to all the leaders that I could get my hands on to find out their tips, tricks, and techniques to get things done. I got a lot of brands in that I was able to navigate my portfolio very smartly. And I did a great job, I think, on behalf of my clients. I found a lot of people's lives I wound up changing. And it was so great and rewarding to feel that afterwards. It made it all worth it. And look, I'm never shy to say it. Sure, I might not have been making the money that I was making back in my corporate days, but the job satisfaction, life satisfaction was there. I was creating great relationships, changing people's lives, and let's face it, I was working from home. I was working my own hours. Nobody told me when to come in and when to stop. And you know what it turns out, Josh? I worked a hell of a lot longer on a daily basis than I did back in the corporate world. But I was doing it for me. And that was really the most rewarding thing. Getting into all this and sort of at the end of the day, you're not going to know unless you try. And life is long. You're going to be working for the rest of your life. You might as well just try it to see if it works. If it wasn't working for me, I would have had to come up with another plan. But I made it work because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then that's ultimately what led me to review all the brands in my portfolio and wound up with Naturals to Go for that reason.
No, it's so powerful, and I want to be respectful as we're kind of wrapping down time. And franchising is just so powerful where, you do kind of have to take that risk, but you can literally be in your 9 to 5 and still explore these opportunities and literally get a full picture of what the financials look like, what the lifestyle looks like, and being able to validate that opportunity. And as you kind of jumped into, you were a franchise consultant, you evaluated tons and tons of opportunities, and you made the decision to become a Naturals to Go owner operator. And I think anyone I speak to, I think always kind of mentions the idea of a vending machine and kind of how that works. So can you dive us into your thought process of actually making that investment yourself, and kind of walk us through briefly what is Naturals to Go and how it's a business opportunity, not a natural franchise, and kind of what the differentiator is there, as we'll kind of wrap down our time here?
Well, look, I had some boxes I wanted to check too, and they were getting checked as a franchise consultant. But I had some life changes going on too. My wife and I were moving from New York to Florida. She heard me on the phone for those 5 years doing what I did, and she said one day, "You know what? Why don't we do something?" I'm like, "Okay, you want to work with me? That's good. Okay, so that means you value something in me then." But all kidding aside, so I said, "All right, let's start to look at what do we want." And we talked about it. We want to work from home. We want to make our own hours. We don't want to have employees. We want to deal with only really one person And we want to do it together. And I already knew, because I always was working with Naturals to Go and talking to candidates about it, that would be the perfect fit for us. There are so many husband-wife teams that do Naturals to Go. There are father-son, mother-daughter, mother-sons. There's people that come in and bring their retired parents in. They have their kids from college when they're home on break, work on it. It applies to everyone. And we said this would be a great husband-wife business to do. So we wound up doing it, and we were off to the races. And then, because I was always talking about Naturals to Go, now I got into it. 1 and 1 made 2 on Naturals to Go side. So we started talking about maybe I could focus my efforts on doing what I did in franchise consulting, but doing it exclusively for Naturals to Go. So, and that's where I am now, as a business startup consulting, helping people that are interested in the vending business ultimately explore this opportunity and decide whether the Naturals to Go business opportunity is right for them or not. Now, you mentioned business opportunity versus franchise. Yeah, there's a distinct difference there. First thing is that there's no franchise fee and no royalties, right? That's the big differentiator. Second thing is that our owner operators are independent business owners. We are the infrastructure behind them that is helping them start and grow their business over time. And the third thing is we don't have a franchise disclosure document. We operate under terms and conditions, which is a little bit different. And those are the 3 main things. So it provides a lot more flexibility. You're operating under your own brand, but you know that you have all of the benefits of a franchise behind you, just without those other things: franchise fee, royalties, and the franchise disclosure document. That's the key. That answer your question?
Yeah, that's Naturals to Go, everyone, in a nutshell. I know your time's wrapped up at this point, so probably want to wrap it up. Correct, Matt?
Yeah. So look, I'll give a little bit of flavor on this for a little bit more time. Look, at some point, Josh, you have used a vending machine in your life, right?
100%.
Were you impressed with the experience?
No, I'm not.
No, you were not. And by the way, most people aren't. So what we do is we train our operators to go in there and do 2 things. One, know that this is their business, that they take pride in what they do every day. And the second thing is that they treat the customer as number 1. This is a customer-centric business. The industry might be people that run routes and fill the machines when they want to fill them with whatever they're told to fill it with. For us, it's a lot more simple and success-oriented. You keep your machine functioning, clean, and stocked with what people want. And when you do that, you are going to be successful. That means you're nimble, you pay attention, you ask questions of people, you interact with your customers when you're servicing the machine. You become the snack guy. Guess what? The snack guy's here. And guess what? That gives you hero status. And I'm not joking. You walk into that room and you know that people are looking for their burritos or their salads or their candy bars or whatever. And it's in your bins, you are the hero. And so that's the business itself. But at the end of the day, we're not just selling vending machines. It is a vending program that comes with the vending machine. So we're finding the locations for you. We're providing all of the technical support. We're providing all the training, the coaching, the mentoring, your business identity package. All of that stuff is part of your investment. All you need to do is service your machines. It's a simple business model. That's why I loved it. I didn't need anything complicated in my life moving forward. I got enough complications having at that point 2 kids in college. I'm done. We wanted a simple business. That's why we got into it. And that's why I bestow that on everyone I talk to now, that this business is all about having fun and knowing that you do your business the way you want. It appeals to people of all ages, of all phases of their career. They can start as small as they want and as large as they want, and they can grow their business to as large as they want at their own pace. And we are always there every single step of the way. It is a real perfect opportunity to be affiliated with. If I must say so myself. I mean, hey, I am from Naturals to Go.
No, 100%. No, if you or someone you know is interested, definitely shoot me a message. Let's schedule an appointment. Let's see if you may be a qualified candidate for Naturals to Go. I know I literally get candidates that literally inquire about Naturals to Go on a daily basis. Everyone I speak to, I kind of made that joke about crypto, NFTs, finance. You could definitely throw vending machines in there, and no one really knows what that opportunity actually looks like. And the fact that it's not a franchise opportunity, you're creating your own LLC, you're not paying royalties, and you still have those systems in place because, like you said, no one really knows how to actually go about it. But that's where the money is, that's where the value is. You're providing this good, that service to other people. So that's very powerful. And Naturals to Go, no employees, literally a vending machine, very minimal work. You're able to continue your day job, whatever it is that you're passionate about, and still being able to provide this passion to other people. Everyone's focused on the health phase, the wellness, the fitness. This provides such a good service, staying up to date with the new time. So really cool opportunity, Matt.
Hey, Josh, consider this for a moment.
Yeah.
As a final thought, is day and age where, having employees seems to be the bane of companies' existence, both big and small, people not showing up, things like that. The vending machine is actually your employee. You know what that means?
Mm-hmm.
Shows up every day. It's working 24 hours a day. There's no vacation, right? There's no sick leave. It's a perfect employee to have. So I leave you with that.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time, Matt. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me. This was
Yeah.
great. I appreciate it. Good luck with everything. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Talk to you soon as well. We'll do episode 2 sometime later on.
You got it. Peace.
Enjoy the rest of your